Indiana County 911. My brother's gone. Can you be a little more specific, sir? He took my brother. Who took him? I don't know who took him. I don't know what. Sir, take a breath. Explain to me what happened.
And I looked out and there was this big red blinking UFO.
I can just say this. Something's going on in the woods. Something's going on.
They're not dogs, they're not coyotes. What could it be, right?
I had an encounter with a skunk ape, and it completely altered the course of my life.
I found his skull. Are you guys going to want to come build this?
Put him out.
I just see it.
Sightings of a UFO hovering over a barn.
Millie woke up from a dream, and when I went into the bedroom, she said there's a monster on the wall.
They saw that the creature had run through a barbed wire fence. They were able to obtain hairs. They sent the hairs to their lab, and it came back as an unknown creature.
Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin.
What is up, guys, and welcome to the most bizarre show on the internet. I am the wrestler announcer that they call Shayn Squatch.
Yeah, you're going hard already today. This is like 2 weeks in a row.
Dude, I just started the beginning, and as soon as I was trying to do the extended beginning, it just turned into a wrestler thing. So I just kind of rolled with it, man. It's just off the lip, man.
Yeah, I don't have that much energy tonight, but I am the big bad Boo Daddy Orin Felix.
And today, guys, I know we started off with some high, happy energy, but we do have something very sad that we have to tell you guys. We have been promoting Squonkapalooza 2, but unfortunately, Orin wasn't going to be able to make it out there because of being able to go to Small Town Monster Fest and just stuff with work. So I was going to end up riding that one solo, but due to some more financial stuff going on with me, I'm also not going to be able to make it out to Squonkapalooza 2, which sucks because I had a lot of fun going last year, and we're both supposed to be speakers this year, but, you know, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully next year we'll be able to have the whole gang there. I've heard it's an awesome event. Definitely looking forward to checking that out sooner rather than later. So, yeah, you guys just be on the lookout for that next year. Hopefully we'll get to see you all out there then.
But all the same, because they are friends, we will still do a little bit of a promotion for that. So if anybody is in the Pennsylvania, Johnstown area, Squonkapalooza is going on from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. at the Central Park. It's free for all ages, and they're going to have a lot of fun stuff going on, like games, food, vendors, crafts, goods, entertainers, artists, cosplay, contests, and more. So again, even though we're not going to be there, doesn't mean you guys can't go. So make sure you guys mark that on your calendar if you're close, because I guarantee you guys will have fun at that event. And moving into the front of house stuff, if anybody has an encounter that they would like to report, you guys can report those to ommencounterreports@outlook.com. There is also a submission form on the link tree that you guys can fill out for that. No matter how big, no matter how small, we definitely want to hear about them. We love collecting the stories, and we love giving you guys our input on them. So it's been a little bit since we've collected any bizarre encounters, and if any of you got them, don't be afraid. Just shoot us a message, and we would absolutely love to talk about them with you.
And you guys also remember to submit your own questions for Bizarre Inquiries, or most of the time, Patreon exclusive mini show.
And if you guys want to support what we do over here and make it so that maybe we can make it out to some more events next year, because we can kind of keep a little bit of the back burner, because we usually try to keep everything towards stuff that goes with the shows and everything. You guys can support us through going and joining the Patreon. I am going to be doing another reconstruction of the Patreon. I'm probably going to condense it down to maybe just 2 tiers, make it so that there's like the full benefits tier, and then there's going to be just like an ad-free early access tier. So if you are a Patreon member, make sure you to look out for that, see when it changes, because I don't know if it's going to boot you guys off. So if you guys are interested in obviously staying Patreon members, make sure when I update those that you guys are still in whatever tier that you would like to be in. And there will be 7-day free trials for those too. So if anybody wants to see what it's all about, that is still going to be available. The second way that you guys can support us is through the OMM merch store. We're going to be dropping some brand new designs over there in the next week or two. For people that have us on Instagram, you guys saw me tease them a little bit. I did the Sasquatch design, the Dogman design. I think I had a second Sasquatch design. Yes, I did. And then I also made one that has a political reptilian on it that says vote on his lapel, and it's done in like a big button, and it says Reptilians for America. So if you guys like all that kind of conspiratorial / weird creature merchandise, you guys can go and check out the OMM merch store. And if you guys use Cryptid10, you guys will receive 10% 10% off at checkout. And the third and one of the best ways that you guys can support the show is through leaving reviews or ratings for the show on iTunes or Spotify. Our good buddy Kevin recently left a 5-star review on iTunes. I see all the numbers go up on Spotify because I know we have a lot of Spotify listeners. But for anybody that's on the iTunes side, if you guys wouldn't mind taking a moment to just leave us a quick review, even if it's only one sentence, we absolutely appreciate it. And, if you guys can't support the show in any other way, it'd be fantastic if you could do that. But if not, we just appreciate that you guys enjoy the show.
And you guys can also get up with us through social media. Instagram's where we're most active. But be sure to follow Open Minds Media and Bizarre Inquiries on, let's see, what all do we have at this point? We got the TikTok, we got Discord, we got YouTube, we got all sorts of things, guys. Just get up with us, do the internet things.
And all of those, including all of those specific links, are all available down in the link tree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, hopping into today's episode, we actually have a deep dive from Orin this week. We've been kind of going back and forth. Last week we did Sam the Sandown Clown. That was one of my deep dives. We have some awesome guests coming up soon, one of which that I finally got on the books is Ron Moorhead. And for anybody that's familiar with Sasquatch stuff, you guys guarantee know who Ron Moorhead is, the legendary man who recorded the Sierra Sounds. But for today, of course, before we get into this pocket of stuff that we got going on, we have another 2-part saga type episode that I think you said might even expand into little subcategories. So without further ado, man, I'll pass the mic to you and let you get into your research you've been digging into.
Yeah, so this is kind of another synchronicity type thing going on here. So, we generally don't go super hard into like the conspiratorial side of things on the show. But, we've kind of been dipping our toes into that more recently. And, I thought it would be kind of fun to just kind of start talking about some of these more like secret societies, occult, conspiracy type things. So this is probably going to be kind of an unofficial series. We're going to start this off with a 2-parter and then kind of sprinkle them in here and there just whenever the time is right. And
you're talking about the Marvel series thing. This is almost like a Marvel series thing with Jack Parsons. That was like somewhat of a farther down the line movie, That was like a little satellite movie.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, so this first one's going to be a 2-parter, and I actually started on the research for all of this stuff before current events and everything that's been going crazy here the past few days. Mm-hmm. But we are going to talk today and next week about the Freemasons. So, if we're going to talk about secret societies and the occult and conspiracies, you got to start with the Freemasons. So, unless you got anything else, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it.
Hop right in, man.
All right, so like I said, this is going to be at least 2-part series. This first part is going to be more kind of history and facts and kind of more of the drier side of things.
Dare I say the framework?
Yeah,
I like dropping that in whenever I get a chance.
And then part 2, that's going to be more like symbolism and ritual and all that kind of stuff. So part 2 is probably going to be a little more of a back and forth fun episode to talk about. But you got to, like you said, lay the framework. So we are going to get into some of the history of the Freemasons. All right, so the Freemasons are the oldest and largest fraternal organization in the world. And one of the main requirements for membership is a belief in, quote, a single supreme being. Now, interestingly, they don't specify what that supreme being is. So just whatever supreme being you believe in, hey, that's good to go.
But the other weird part, though, is that there is a Freemason Bible, right? I actually have a copy of it on the shelf behind me. Yeah. And obviously it's like the Bible, but it kind of has like its own specific wordings for things and stuff like that. But there's a lot of pictures of Solomon's temple. So just kind of
we're going to get into
hints about a little bit of the stuff going on, but
we're going to get heavy into that. So, anyway, this single supreme being is often referred to as the great architect of the universe. But, even though they have their own Bible and all that, Freemasonry is allegedly not a religion, but rather, quote, a system of morality, which is veiled heavily in allegory and illustrated by symbols, which, like I said, we'll talk a lot more about next week's episode.
Are we going to talk about the checkerboard floor? Because I love getting into the checkerboard floor conversation.
We're gonna hit that too.
I'm always making jokes because Gabby's into the checkerboard stuff recently, and she recently bought a shower curtain that was checkerboard, and I have this Northern Lights light that kind of shines into the bathroom, so it's not too abrasive when you go in there to go to the bathroom at night. And it's like a green and a blue, right? So I have the checkerboard and I have that, and I told her every single time I try to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I feel like I'm crossing the abyss.
Yeah, you got your Masonic pavement shower curtain there. Matches your Van slip-ons.
She's definitely got those too. So, is Gabby secretly a Freemason? I guess the world may never know.
Stay tuned to find out. Anyway, so this kind of use of secrecy and symbolism has obviously made like the Freemasons one of the most influential and infamous secret societies, quote unquote, in history. And kind of the, no pun intended, set in stone kind of origins of the Freemasons date back to like stonemasons guilds of medieval Europe. But the Freemasons themselves claim a lot more like mysterious and exotic origins for the group. And kind of the main one is an organization known as the Knights Templar. So the Knights Templar, the origins of this group date back to the 11th century. And at this point in time, pilgrimages to the Holy Land, so like the Middle East, Jerusalem, that was considered a duty for like every Christian that was able to do this. And so there was kind of like well-defined travel routes that connected Europe and the Middle East. But these pilgrims still like routinely, they faced like hazardous terrain. And then a lot of times they faced hostility or like outright attacks from, the local tribes as they were making this journey. So in response to this, a Benedictine monk named Gerard de Martinez established a kind of hospital/refuge in Jerusalem to kind of ensure that these pilgrims had safety and protection. So the hospital grew to include like a marketplace and gardens, and they even built a library there. And due to the success of this hospital, the monks established 2 more hospitals in the Middle East. And these hospitals, before long, they started attracting like knights who had served in the Crusades, but had kind of like retired from military service, but still wanted to serve the Lord in some capacity. So the monks and the knights began wearing black robes with a white cross on them, and they became known as the Hospitallers because of this like hospital/refuge. So news of the Hospitallers and their, good works and whatnot kind of spread across Europe, and European nobles began donating large sums of money and like even property and, buildings and castles and whatnot to them. And so this group soon amassed like a huge amount of assets. And at this point, they started to become more focused on military actions than, charity, how they originally started out. So this is kind of just, tale as old as time. They started out with good intentions, and then they got rich and kind of became greedy.
Of course. With any power comes corruption. I mean.
Yeah. So because of all this success that the Hospitallers were having, a rival organization was soon established. So in 1118 AD, 9... we're going to be talking about a lot of 3s and 9s in this series.
Oh, so shocker.
9 French knights who had fought in the Crusades formed their own order. And they started out their order with also the goal of kind of providing protection to pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land. And pretty soon the king of Jerusalem became impressed by their motives and, their chivalry and whatnot. And he provided them with living quarters at the site of King Solomon's temple.
See, I don't know if you want me to hop in at this point, but
we're going to talk about Solomon's temple a lot in a little bit. Let's put it on the back burner.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. I don't know what exactly you have in here as far as that stuff goes, but I was going to get into the whole Freemasons.
We
with
got a
temple.
whole section on Solomon's temple, so let's just press pause on that for a minute. But anyway, jumping back in, so allegedly, quote, access to their quarters was through a passageway adjoining the church and convent of the temple. And so they anointed themselves as the soldiery of the temple, or the Templars, which is where we get Knights Templar from.
Quick side note, just a fun game that people can play with the show, and this can be something that goes on for as long as the show runs. Whether you're a drinker or a smoker, every time we say allegedly, you got to take a drink or you got to take a hit. So there's the game for the show.
Now, in my notes, I throw allegedly's in there on purpose. Like, let's just sprinkle another one in there.
We're going to start getting obsessive where like every other paragraph starts with allegedly.
Yeah. Well, hey, we don't want to be too set in stone about anything.
We got that one and Magical Fiasco.
Well, we might be talking about kind of Magical Fiasco type stuff in future episodes. So, But anyway, so like I said, they had access to this Temple of Solomon. That's how they became known as the Knights Templar. But anyway, kind of same with the Hospitallers. The ranks of the Knights Templar started growing dramatically, and they quickly became like one of the richest monastic orders like in the entire Christian world. And in order to kind of manage their flow of assets and resources, they established what was kind of like the first primitive system of banking in the world. And they also kind of instituted a more formal membership structure at this point. And the new structure consisted of 3 classes. It was knights, chaplains, and serving brethren. And the 2 highest classes, which were knights and chaplains, were required to undergo a rigorous initiation process. And this is, kind of theorized where a lot of secret societies and whatnot get their like super duper secretive initiations today.
Which is usually a lot of very suspectfully gay stuff.
Yeah, kind of sexual in nature.
Just like the sex magic, man. I mean, they sit in a circle and they beat off into a circle. So.
So around this same time, the Templars began wearing white robes with red crosses on them. And they chose this to kind of be in direct opposition to the cloaks that the Hospitallers wore.
Kind of funny how many organizations will take something and just invert it. And that's like the one that ends up taking over.
It's like the thing about copy my homework, but
do it a little bit better.
Like yours or whatever. Yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously theirs became the more popular of the 2 symbols. And just another example, like the swastika. For thousands of years, it meant peace and love. And then as soon as the Nazis got a hold of it, they spun it to the side, made it a totally different thing. So now if you see swastikas on old pieces of art or old things that were like in museums and everything, you instantly associate it with Nazis and that swastika. Even though, again, it's just stealing somebody's homework and just kind of
thousands of years,
changing it a little bit. And then that's the thing now.
So, okay, now we're going to fast forward a little bit to the year 1146. And Pope Eugenius III.
That's a mouthful.
Declared, yeah. I had to go through and like read these names to myself like 10 times to make sure I got them all. I probably still don't. I'm going to fuck up some of them.
I just go gung ho when I go in, so you just watch me struggle as we run. So
I tried to practice a little bit. But anyway, our boy Pope Eugenius III.
I can tell you practiced.
Declared that the Templars were free to operate without direct papal supervision. And so this was a huge deal to like have basically this get out of jail free card. They could do whatever they wanted to. And this basically allowed them to accumulate even more wealth and property than they had before. But it also kind of inadvertently led to their downfall. So rumors at this point began to spread that the Templars had shifted from an order kind of devoted to protection and charity and service and whatnot to one more focused on accruing as much material wealth as possible. And that's because that's exactly what they were doing. But also at this point, the Hospitallers had become almost exclusively focused on like wealth gaining, and they were not worried about protecting people either. So the Hospitallers began a conflict with the Templars to try to capture all the Templars' assets. So basically, this is like a medieval gang war between 2 knight/monk clubs, basically. So it's like knight-monk fight club back in the Middle Ages.
I would have loved to have seen that.
So anyway,
I have money on the monk.
Which one?
He's quiet, but he's got those moves.
So the Hospitallers kind of ultimately ended up winning this conflict.
The monks won against the knights.
Yeah. Go figure. Maybe it was like some Robin Hood type shit. But anyway, so at this point, the Templars, most of them retreated back to Europe, but this is kind of where their base of like wealth and property and everything was anyway. So this was, not the worst thing in the world for them. And we're going to fast forward in history a little bit, unless you've got something to throw in here.
Oh, I think I'm good for now until we get to the Temple of Solomon part.
We're going to be there in just a minute. So anyway, fast forwarding to the year 1306. And at this point, the Templars' Grand Master was a fellow by the name of Jacques de Molay, which I practiced that one a lot too.
Let's say Grand Master. There's the usage of that word too.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, Jacques de Molay was summoned to Rome by Pope Clement V. That one's easy compared to some of these other ones.
That Jacques de Molay is fun to say, though. Hey, that rhymed.
It feels good in your mouth. Just roll that around in your mouth a little bit. See how it feels.
Jacques de Molay.
There you go. Anyway, the Pope wished to address rumors that the Templars were engaging in, quote, unspeakable apostasy against God, detested idolatry, execrable vice, and many heresies. And so when Jacques de Molay arrived in Rome, he brought the Pope a large gift, quote unquote, of gold and silver. And he was ultimately kind of given a papal apology by the Pope. And so they were just free to continue operating as it. So basically, Jacques de Molay bribed the Pope.
Yeah, got a slap on the wrist and sent him on his way.
Not even a slap on the wrist. He just got to go on vacation and
a nice tap on the ass. Like,
yep.
Good game, my friend.
Good game. Yep, there you go. So anyway, King Philip of France, he was already kind of becoming fearful that the Templars were growing too rich and powerful. But this whole bribe of the Pope thing, this was his final straw. And he just became outraged, and he set out to squash the Templars basically by any means necessary. So on October the 13th of the year 1307, King Philip ordered that the Templars were to be kind of like rounded up and arrested in these coordinated raids all over Europe. So this is, what is it in Star Wars Episode 3, like Order 66?
Execute Order 66.
Yeah, this is basically what they did to the Templars. So ultimately, more than 2,000 Templars were arrested and charged with heresy, which is that was a big crime back in those days. Heresy is also, if I'm not mistaken, what they charged a lot of the women with in the Salem witch trials. So basically, heresy was get out of jail free card for the establishment. If you charge someone with heresy, there was no coming back from that.
Yeah, it's just you're dead at that point. Like you're getting killed.
Yeah, you can't say you didn't heresy. But once somebody says it,
I swear, sir, I did not heresy. I did no heresies.
I did not heresy without consent, rather. But anyway, so these arrests were carried out on Friday the 13th.
Ding, ding, ding. Sorry.
Yep, kind of led to the superstition that Friday the 13th is an unlucky day. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Wouldn't it be lucky to the other side around, though? Because they were able to round them all up that day?
I guess it depends on perspective. But
Forced perspective. That shows who's writing the books, right?
Exactly. If the Freemasons are the ones ruling the world, this was a really unlucky day for them.
So there it is for the rest of the world.
There you go.
I've always called Friday the 13th a lucky day. I always have awesome luck on Friday the 13th.
Well, you're not a Freemason then.
That's confirmed. True. As for Gabby, though, we'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Next time one comes around, let me know.
I'll keep an eye.
But anyway, so many of the Knights Templar that were rounded up, they were tortured and burned at the stake, and this included the Grand Master Jacques de Molay.
One last time, Jacques de Molay.
There you go. So after kind of, all the Templars, or most of the Templars rather, were wiped out, King Philip claimed that they had abandoned their Christian faith and they had begun worshiping a god called Baphomet. And this is where things start getting interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So this entity was later incorporated into many different occult traditions. It's often used as kind of like a symbol of balance or opposites. It's been linked to the Gnostics, which we'll probably talk about more in a future episode. And Baphomet became an important figure to Aleister Crowley and his philosophy of Thelema, which we talked about in the Jack Parsons series. And again, we're probably going to talk about this at some point in this unofficial series again.
And for anybody that isn't familiar with what the name Baphomet, quick and simple, it's that thing that you've seen where it has the human body with the boobs and the penis, but it has its hands where one's going up and one's going down, and it has the goat head. So there you go.
Yes. And piggybacking off of that, Baphomet is also the inspiration for the entity that's depicted on the Devil card in like the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot card deck. And like this tarot card deck is, when someone says tarot cards, this is the mental image you cook up. And I've got the card right here, Shane, if you want to see it.
I was going to say I have that same one because I got two decks up there.
Yeah, so, that's the card. I mean, if you guys want to Google it, just Google the Devil tarot card. That's going to be it. But anyway, the card is the 15th card of the major arcana, and it's supposedly associated with the planet Saturn. And that's kind of interesting because a lot of these occult groups supposedly like worship Saturn and, Jupiter and the sun and these different celestial bodies, but Saturn is one that comes up time and time again.
Something really interesting just to throw in here. I recently had a guy on the show named Ari Asulin, and he does a whole website where he's basically trying to like chronicle like the history of like the world, like alternative history. And he spent an hour on the show the other day explaining the whole like sun worship and how things were in the sky and how everything looked at the time and why they thought things looked like gods and all this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in kind of hearing a little bit of the background as far as that stuff goes, go and check out that episode. Also somebody that we could possibly have on this show after the Freemason series, if you're interested in having somebody kind of break down the star/Saturn understanding of all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, because like especially sun worship ends up being huge in a lot of these occult secret society type circles. So, I mean, a lot of it just kind of circles back to these same themes. And we're going to, again, talk about that a lot more next week. But this is kind of laying the groundwork, framework, the cornerstone, if you will, since we're talking about Freemasons. So, anyway, kind of jumping back in. Like I said, the Devil card, it's the 15th card of the major arcana associated with Saturn. And according to the Fool's Journey, which is kind of the story that is told through the major arcana, the Devil card represents, quote, the fool's involvement in economic materialism and complacency. And I thought that was kind of interesting in light of, like secret societies and the Illuminati and whatever running the world and, distracting people with materialism and complacency.
And they got so much money, they don't even think about it. They're just, it's just water. Who cares? Well, not who cares about water. Water is very important, but you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, we're with you. We're stepping in what you're shitting.
There you
go. Anyway, so in the year 1313, interesting year there, Pope Clement V declared that the Knights Templar were to be officially abolished, and much of their assets were seized by King Philip at this point. And once they were abolished, remnants of the order allegedly fled to Scotland, where the remaining members established what would, again, allegedly ultimately become the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry.
Getting somebody drunk in that paragraph.
Yeah. So, a lot of people claim that there's no direct historical connection between the Knights Templar and the Freemasons, and just kind of the Freemasons adopted all this symbolism. But there is a chapel in Edinburgh, Scotland, called Rosalind Chapel. And it contains carvings that allegedly depict, quote, the initiation of a Mason by a figure wearing a Knights Templar's mantle. And keep this in mind because we're going to talk about this chapel and the carvings in it again in a little bit. So, the impact of the Knights Templar, clearly it's big on the Freemasons. Pretty much any secret society we talk about today, it's got some sort of link to the Knights Templar. And, notably, we talked about they pretty much established our idea of modern banking systems. They were regarded as the first international bankers, which I think is kind of interesting when we talk about kind of John Keel type stuff, these mysterious letters that he got or from an organization supposedly called the International Bankers. I don't know if there's anything there, but as soon as I read that, I was like, "Ooh, yeah, there's something to."
The Illuminati's fucking with portals because obviously they're doing all the crossing the abyss and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, like maybe they're like, "All right, we have something going on here. Shut up."
Yeah, let's send John Keel some letters.
That's how you really get your point across. Is you send some aggravated, perfectly worded letters, strongly worded letters.
So I thought this was kind of cool and interesting. The Templars kind of came up with our modern concept of checks. And this was done so that the pilgrims who were traveling from Europe to the Holy Land didn't have to carry as much like cash or treasure or whatnot with them. And they could just, go to these different Templar outposts and basically cash in their coins or money or whatever and get a check that they could take to the next outpost and get money back whenever they got where they were going. And this was supposedly to like reduce their risk of being attacked and ransacked and all their shit stolen from them.
Hey, less heavy stuff to carry too.
Yeah, definitely.
How easy is it to carry a piece of paper in your pocket?
Easier than a whole sack of gold. But,
true.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, there's all sorts of legends today that there's still undiscovered treasure troves of Templar gold and whatnot, all over the world. Oak Island, Nova Scotia in Canada, that's one of the big ones. There's a whole, I think it's History Channel show about that. I haven't really watched much of it.
Gabby's dad's been watching that shit since season 1. It's like one of his favorite shows. He used to talk about it all the time.
He knows all about it. So Templar expert over there.
But hey, man, even if you found the treasure in the first season, you got to drag it out for 8 seasons. I mean, fuck.
Well, if they're still making TV, they probably didn't find much treasure.
Maybe.
But it's kind of also been suggested that the Templars learned occult secrets while they were in the Middle East and the Holy Land. And this has kind of led, like I said, to many secret societies and occult organizations adopting Templar imagery and traditions. So at this point, we are going to jump into the King Solomon stuff, which I think is the coolest part of like the history of the Freemasons.
I agree. Let's hop right in. I don't even want to delay it.
All right. And whenever, you want to jump in with anything you've got to add, I know you just had a guest on Inquiries that, was an expert on all this stuff. And I purposefully did not listen to that episode. So you could fill us in a little bit during this. So whenever you want to jump in, feel free.
Hey, and if there's any gaps too, that's just another potential guest we could have on. They can just specifically laser target on Solomon's Temple too.
Yeah, I mean, this series, especially the Freemason episodes, it's going to be a very shallow dive. I mean, we could do a 10-part series on the Freemasons and barely even scratch the surface. So kind of my goal with this is to just give our listeners that might not be, because I would assume we have a lot of listeners who are more into cryptids and things like that and might not necessarily be more into the conspiratorial secret society side of things. It's kind of to give, like we said, a framework of all this kind of stuff, especially in light of current events.
Hey, but the occult stuff links into the paranormal, so at least we got those people going, because people are coming for the paranormal. So,
and it seems like the more we get talking about certain things, the more we have to kind of circle around occult conspiratorial type subjects. So that's why I thought this would be a good thing to do.
I mean, at some point, cryptids and all that, UFOs, it's all going to turn into conspiracy. I mean, it's just a matter of avoiding the political conspiracies because we're not trying to divide people here.
Yeah, we're trying to be as unpolitical as possible, but a lot of this is stuff that happened hundreds of years ago. So I think we should be good. But anyway, let's jump into King Solomon. So King Solomon is one of, if not the central figure in Masonic mythology. And for those of you who have not read your Bible recently, myself included, King Solomon was a Jewish prophet / ruler, and he was the son of King David, as in like David and Goliath, which is kind of interesting when you consider that Goliath was most likely a Nephilim.
Mm-hmm. I was actually listening to an episode today, and they said that they were guessing, because of the way they described it in the Bible, that he would have been between, I think it was 12 and 16 feet tall.
That's a big son of a bitch.
Yeah, that's a big dude to be taken out with a rock.
Yeah. So anyway, jumping back into our boy Solomon, he was known for being exceedingly wise, and some people even kind of consider him to have been a magician and an exorcist. And he's also known for having had 700 wives and 300 concubines. So he was a very busy man on top of all these other accomplishments he had.
Dude, that's like, you could change a different one every day of the year for basically 2 years and still never double back around. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, he had a lot of stamina.
Hey man,
So,
when they don't have, if it's a time of erectile dysfunction, they don't have erectile dysfunction pills. I mean, you just got to keep it up, right? I mean, that's the only way that you know it's still going to work.
Problem. But anyway, so King Solomon is also notable for commissioning the construction of the first temple of Jerusalem. And this gets back to what we were talking about with the Knights Templar. This is that same site. So construction on the temple began in the year 957 BC and supposedly took 7 years to complete. And 7 years doesn't seem like very much time to me for these people to have built this whole ass temple.
Well,
But
do you get into the weird side about this kind of stuff, talking about Solomon's ring or anything?
Yeah, no. I wanted to keep especially this part as factual as possible because we're going to get a little more out there in part 2. So
it depends on your religious views, I guess. Because
throw weird stuff in.
I would say it depends on your religious view, I guess. Because if you are a person that's a Christian or a Catholic or you believe in the Bible, then supposedly Solomon had this ring where he was able to control demons and he had demon help to build the temple. Which I had this whole discussion with Vicky Joy Anderson. I don't know if I ever had her on with you before, but she's the one that talks about the sleep paralysis and everything.
Yeah.
And we had this heavy conversation about this kind of stuff on people can view that as a cult and say that like this guy is working with demons. Or on the other side of it, you could say this guy learned how to control demons to basically make them do the opposite of the thing that they would want to do, which is building a temple to God himself. So it's like we're trying to figure out if there's this split between there's like the good side of King Solomon, then there's the occult side of King Solomon. And we kind of were wondering if there wasn't necessarily this bad occult side, but rather they hijacked the idea, because if there were demons that he was forcing to do this kind of shit, of course, demons are going to do everything in their power to make him look like a bad guy so that nobody tries to dig into what he was doing to control the demons. So just kind of a weird moral Christian kind of debate, I guess. But was King Solomon evil for controlling demons? I mean, I don't know, man. If you're making bad things do good things, like build a temple to God, I mean, is it really
two wrongs
that
make
bad?
a right type thing?
But I mean, again, it's almost disrespectful to demons in the first place, because that's going to be the last thing they want to do is to build a temple to the person that they hate more than anything. So, I mean, if anything, it's almost like karma.
Well, taking it in kind of a different direction, this again gets back to issues of language. You know, Solomon is widely thought of to be almost like a demigod. Well, what if, you know, these demons were just fucking aliens? You know, he was a Nephilim alien, whatever you want to call him, who was controlling other extraterrestrial beings to build this temple.
I was going to say, you're going to go ancient aliens on me, dude, because that's one theory that I've definitely considered, is the whole fact that angels and demons are two different alien races that were battling for dominance over Earth.
No, I totally think that. I mean, when you read a lot of these old accounts, not just in the Bible, but in other ancient texts, it comes across as, you know, almost like warring government factions almost.
And if you think about the demons as possibly reptilians and those light beings like Layzell sees as possibly like the angels, I mean, it kind of fits with the paradigm that we have with some extraterrestrial stuff. And either you can look at that as religious stuff or extraterrestrial. I feel like it's a matter of perception, you know?
And again, it's people, you know, describing what they saw with the best language they had. You know, so this very well could have been flesh and blood extraterrestrials coming down and interacting with these people and building these structures.
And I mean, that would totally make sense how it got built in 7 days, because, I mean, there's some kind of 7 years, sorry.
Still.
Yeah, even the pyramids, though, they were built in a time that doesn't seem like it fits how long it would have taken to actually do this kind of stuff.
And precision of all this stuff as well.
And again, even digging into like what supposedly Solomon's temple looks like, and I'll put pictures.
We're going to talk about that in just a second.
Into the description, like it's very extravagant. It's not some thrown together, let's get it done kind of thing. Like if you saw this thing, it took a long time to build. Like it was very, very detailed.
And very methodical and very thought out, and each dimension and each aspect of it had a very specific meaning, which is a good segue back into the notes.
We have to take a quick second to give a shout out to all of the fantastic sponsors of the show. So without further ado, Orin, why don't you let them know a little bit about some of our sponsor friends?
Big shout out to our buddies Rick and Hans with IKNOWSQUATCH. Check them out for all your squatchy gear needs. Joe at Cryptoteeology, he's always killing it with your wearable Cryptid Favorites.
I missed
And
that.
Mr. Jones, take it away.
And Snarly Yow for a fantastic natural line of beard oil, beard balm, beard shampoo, and body wash, all with an enticing woodsy aroma of smoky cedar with a hint of mint. But that's not the only thing the Snarly Yow does. Orin, what else does he do?
He also puts on enticing events in the West Virginia area. Our buddy Dave, a.k.a. the Snarly Yow, nicest guy ever. So if you're in the area, check out one of his events. We will be speaking and emceeing at Cryptid Halloween 3 this October.
And we'll, of course, give you guys more information on that as we get closer. And our newest sponsor of the show, I got to give a big shout out to him. And he will also be a guest on the show, I believe, within the next couple weeks. So you guys can hear a little bit about him and his own weird personal stories he's had on his property. But Big Ape Threads, don't forget to go and check that out for all of their Bigfoot and cryptid related designs. And moving into the affiliate links, and you guys can go and check out Oregon-ite, which specializes in scale model pyramid replicas, EMF protection devices, and much more. And if you guys use code OMM at checkout, you guys can receive 10% off.
And a big shout out to our buddy Barry with Dimension Devices. Check out our episode we did with him a couple months ago if you guys haven't. But he makes this super cool ghost hunting device called the Chattergeist. He was nice enough to share one with me and Shayn. Super cool device. He's a super cool guy. All the maintenance and updates and whatnot he does himself. So definitely check that out.
And if you guys want to get a Chattergeist for yourself, you guys can use our affiliate link to receive 10% off. And it is all in pounds, but it does convert over through PayPal. So just because you're not in the UK, don't think that you can't scoop one for yourself. And moving into the last affiliate link, if you guys are another podcast or you guys own a local business, anything like that, you might need to be able to print your logo onto stickers, envelopes, t-shirts, any of that really cool stuff, you guys can go and check out Sticker Mule. And if you guys use our affiliate link that will be down in the show description, you guys can receive a $10 credit towards anything you guys might want to pick up. I use it for all of my stuff. They have really, really good quality, so I highly recommend checking out Sticker Mule.
And now let's get back to the show. So the temple featured a porchway with 2 large columns or pillars, and we're going to talk more about this in a second. But this kind of entranceway led to the main sanctuary, and there's also an inner sanctuary that was known as the Holy of Holies or the Sanctum Sanctorum, which any Marvel fan that should you should recognize that.
Just to throw it in for anybody that's on the Patreon and looking, this is from the Freemason Holy Bible, and that's like a rendering of what Solomon's Temple looked like down to the 2 pillars in the front.
Yeah, and the symbolism of the pillars is huge in Masonry. We're going to talk about that extensively here in a second.
Anybody that knows anything about Freemasons has heard of the 2 pillars, so I mean...
Yeah. So the Holy of Holies was said to be built to house the Ark of the Covenant, which, Indiana Jones, everybody knows what that is. It's the box that supposedly held, most notably, the 10 Commandments, but other religious Christian relics as well. All right, so jumping back in, Freemasons consider King Solomon's Temple to be an example of, quote, divine architecture, and each Masonic lodge is meant to symbolize the temple. And the lodges are ideally supposed to be oriented in an east-west fashion, because this replicates the alignment of King Solomon's temple. So again, we're talking a lot about astrology and basically star, sun, planet worship, that sort of thing. And furthermore, in Masonic legend, there were 3 levels of stonemasons that were involved in the construction of Solomon's temple. And those levels were apprentice, fellowcraft, and grand master.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot more about the degrees and the initiation and whatnot in part 2, but this is where all that kind of starts. So supposedly there were a total of 3, here we go again, grand masters during Solomon's temple's construction, and that included King Hiram of Tyre, Hiram Abiff, who was Solomon's master architect, and then King Solomon himself was the 3rd one.
And just to throw a piece in there that I talked about, or Robbie talked about in the episode that we did, talking about Solomon's Temple and stuff, when we say Freemasons and bricklayers and Masons, we're not talking about just simply laying bricks. They were making these beautiful artistic carvings and stuff. This was some masterful, very high-end stonework. This was not just putting bricks down.
All the churches and cathedrals of Europe. These are the people who built those, and basically everything that would be considered like the Tatarian architecture now, it's what these people built.
Yeah, they were
much.
very highly regarded. I always like to separate that because when you hear stonemason or just masons, you just think of like bricklayers, and this was definitely not
like laying
that.
a cinder block wall or something like that. No, this is not that. They were like the highest level of builders, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more here in a second. So, according to legend, the two pillars that were erected, at the entrance of Solomon's temple, the left pillar was known as Boaz, and the right one was known as Yakin. And Boaz was allegedly carved with the phrase, quote, "May the Lord establish the throne of David and his kingdom for his seed forever." And Yakin was carved with the saying, quote, "In the strength of the Lord shall the kingdom rejoice." And the pillars were said to, quote, "give divine legitimacy to the ruling dynasty." And I thought that was kind of interesting because that very well could be like the basis for, manifest destiny and, all sorts of problems that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
So in Freemasonry, there's like a mythical significance to these two pillars as well. And supposedly the significance of Boaz is revealed during initiation into the first degree, and the significance of Yakin is revealed during initiation into the second degree. And again, we're going to talk about the degrees and the initiations a lot more next week. So this is kind of cool. We're getting back to the tarot for a minute. The pillars of Boaz and Yakin are also depicted on the tarot card, the High Priestess. And Shane, that's this one right here. You can see the two columns with the B and J on them. They don't stand for blowjob. But anyway, so the High Priestess card is the second card of the major arcana, and it's said to have a connection to, quote, "the ancient cult of Astarte or Mary as a representation of the mother goddess." I thought that was kind of interesting. Also, the card depicts pomegranates, as you can see kind of in like the backdrop behind the High Priestess there. And pomegranates are another important symbol in Masonry, and they represent plenty. So, like plenty, having a lot of something.
Because those things do have a shit ton of seeds in them.
Yeah, they do. They do.
At least it's not an upside-down pineapple. And if you know, you know.
No comment. So another aspect of the King Solomon mythology that's really important to Freemasonry is the legend of Hiram Abiff. And like we said a few minutes ago, Hiram Abiff was supposed to have served as King Solomon's master architect. But according to legend, he was murdered by three. There it is again. We also need to make a drinking game after like how many times we say 3s or 9s in this series.
The only thing we haven't hit yet is a 6.
Not yet, but I mean, I'm sure we will at some point. So anyway, he was murdered supposedly by 3 of his apprentices, and this was for refusing to reveal the innermost secrets of stonemasonry, or the craft, as the Freemasons call it.
Can't let them know your trade secrets, man. Take them to the grave.
Exactly. And, that's going to come up again in a second, how that was kind of one of the big driving factors in early Freemasonry. But anyway, it's also said that the legend borrows from, quote, ancient mysteries of early Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Rome. And Hiram Abiff is representative of the Egyptian gods Osiris, Baal, and Bacchus. And we're going to discuss the Masonic Egyptian connections a lot more again in part 2.
Especially Baal. I'm sure everybody that digs into this kind of weird stuff has already heard that name a million times.
Yeah. And so, allegedly, the legend of the murder of Hiram Abiff was incorporated into Freemasonry sometime in the 1700s. And, quote, his, meaning Abiff's, subsequent rebirth, described as his rise from a dead level to a living perpendicular, is symbolized in the initiation into the third degree. And kind of rounding out this guy, again, Roseland Chapel in Edinburgh, Scotland, has another carving that supposedly depicts, this murder of Hiram Abiff. So take that for what you will.
I'm actually kind of curious. I'm about to look that up. So I haven't seen that before.
So I've found the pictures. Like nothing to me looked like a smoking gun. It's all very open for interpretation, I feel like. But hey, all this stuff is, take it all with a grain of salt.
Hey, they don't want you to be able to know everything exactly, so they kind of got to just sprinkle the clues here and there.
But that's basically all I've got at the moment for the King Solomon stuff. Do you have anything you want to add before we fast forward in time a little bit?
We can jump forward. I think that we're covered that spot as much as we can get into it now without getting into a bunch of whole other can of worms. So.
Stuff, yeah. All right, so we're going to fast forward to kind of the medieval times here. And in medieval Europe, many of the skilled craftsmen were members of trade organizations or guilds. And these guilds were formed to kind of preserve trade secrets and ensure higher wages for their members. So it's kind of like a union would be today. And some of the most powerful of these craftsmen were the stonemasons, like we were kind of mentioning a few moments ago. And so many of these stonemasons considered masonry to be what they called, quote, the operative art. So they basically thought like masonry and building was like this higher thing. It wasn't just building buildings. It was like basically almost this, existential, esoteric activity they were partaking in.
I mean, it's literally like the closest that they probably saw at the time as like being a creator, so to speak, like you're creating the world that people are living in. Like that's,
yeah, you're closer to God. You're, almost gods at that point is my interpretation of how they viewed masonry.
Yeah. You're paving civilization realistically. Like somebody was the ones doing that. And it's like, they're the ones that get to take the credit for it as far as they're concerned,
Yeah. And like we said, they built, pretty much all the cathedrals and churches in Europe. So there's like always been kind of this otherworldly, for lack of a better term, connection with masonry, just, from the very beginning.
Hey, man, they built the framework, so that's why they feel they need to control it.
Yeah. So anyway, stonemasons were evaluated on 3, there you go again, skill levels or degrees. It was entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason.
Always.
And progressing from one degree to the next, it kind of entitled the mason to higher wages and more specialized knowledge. And regardless of the degree they were in, like pretty much all these stonemasons, like we said, were of like an elite social status. So this kind of gets back to, the Illuminati and the elites running the world and Freemasons and all that kind of stuff. This could be where, the origins of that were. And since they were of an elite social class, these guys were allowed to freely travel between European countries, which poor people basically were not allowed to do. And because of this, freedom of movement it led to the term Freemasons. So for anyone who's ever wondered, that's why they're called Freemasons.
And I was trying to think about why people couldn't logically move in my head. And the only rational thing I could think about was when you had like the landlords that would control the land and you'd give them the crop and stuff. It was basically you entered into a contract with them. And if you weren't
taxation.
Yeah. If you weren't taking care of their land, then you weren't doing your part of the deal. So you couldn't leave because you already made a commitment to farm that land, take care of that land, do this, do that. So
yeah. And give whoever was in power in that area money, basically.
Or half your crops, more than half your crops, you just get enough to live with and the rest all go to him.
Thinly veiled, the same shit that's going on today, You
ain't wrong there. And it's getting to the point where I'm sure it got with them that they're like, all right, we want more, we want more, we want more. All right, now you can't live off of what we're giving you, so figure it the fuck out because we just want all of this and you can't have it.
Fuck y'all. But anyway, so to kind of protect all these trade secrets and whatnot, the Freemasons adopted a really strict code of secrecy, and they started using like passwords and secret handshakes, and they swore all new initiates to silence. So again, this is where a lot of the secrecy of current Freemasons and all sorts of secret societies and occult organizations and whatnot, a lot of it has its roots in this. So anyway, that's kind of the just the bare bones of medieval Freemasonry. And we're going to fast forward to June 24th of 1717. And the leaders of the 4 Masonic lodges of London gathered together at the Apple Tree Tavern.
Weird that they picked that name.
Apple, tree, Eve, Adam. I assume that's where you're going with it.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it. Yes.
Yeah. I didn't actually think about that till you just said it. That's pretty good, man.
Mm-hmm. Freemasons, man, with their symbology.
Yeah, and the serpent, that's a good one. So anyway, when these guys met together, they formed the first premier Grand Lodge of Freemasonry. And after this happened, membership...
Just to throw in one more thing that I just thought about, too. The apple was knowledge, so...
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, you get a gold star.
Right on my forehead. Bing. There you go. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just didn't want to lose that train of thought.
No, you're good. So once they established the Premier Grand Lodge, membership was no longer restricted solely to stonemasons, and, quote, all men of qualified social stature were welcome. So, this has always been a club for the elites, by the elites. And these new members who were not stonemasons were known as accepted members. And these accepted members pretty quickly became, the majority of the Freemasons. The actual, literal stonemasons started becoming fewer and further between as, the ranks grew and the years passed.
So everybody knows how there's like the local Freemason club in every single city. Do you think they have to have one token stoneworker?
I have no idea. And, that's something we're probably going to get into a little more in next week's episode, but I'll go ahead and throw this in because this is something I did want to, kind of touch on at some point, and I think this is a good opportunity. This was a really hard subject and series of episodes to research. Like, this one took me so much longer to put together than an episode of this length normally would. And it's because the information about the Freemasons is on one of two extremes. Like, it's either anyone who's ever set foot in a Freemasons lodge is a Luciferian Illuminati member, or it's just this fun little club, nothing to see here.
Of course.
So I got this book off of Amazon that's obviously like very pro Mason, but there's some stuff in here that, like, if you know what to look for, it's pretty damning. And we're going to get into that more next week. But, I just kind of wanted to just throw that out there. This was a tough one. I mean, how long I've been working on this and, barely scratching the surface. And, it's one of those deals, like you said, there's small town Masonic lodges in every town across America. And 90+% of people who are involved in Masonry, they're not bad guys. They're not up to some, Illuminati, Luciferian plot. They're just, guys hanging out, drinking beer with their buddies and, maybe, doing some charity for kids in hospitals and things like that. You got to get up to like the high fucking levels for any of this nefarious stuff to come in. Your Uncle Johnny who's, drinking beer at the Masons Lodge, he's probably all right.
But that shit's, I think it's purposefully intended though, because they have those people where they're members, but they're not members, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's like an organization within an organization.
It's intended so that it takes some of the heat from them, because it's like when everybody knows their local Freemason and it's just a drinking club, like it takes the heat off of them because they have all these people that are like, I'm inside of it and this is all it is. Like,
yeah, and we're probably going to talk about this a little bit more when we kind of dig further into the degrees and all that, like where that kind of line of differentiation comes in.
But in all fairness, though, at every single Freemason hall, I do think that there's at least one person that has the full understanding of it, and the rest of them are just kind of lackeys.
Full understanding, but there probably is like one that has more.
They get into the occult understanding where a lot of the other members probably don't get anywhere near that level, because they got to have one guy that if they have somebody who's really promising, they can push them up the ladder,
the pipeline. Yeah.
Yep. So they got to have at least one that has an understanding of the occult workings. Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of a side tangent, but good conversation, I think. But anyway, with this kind of shift in membership, many of the lodges began classifying themselves as speculative rather than operative. And this meant that they kind of no longer focused on actual stonemasonry and architecture, but were more concerned with like promoting ideas and ideals. And so around this time, Freemasonry also began to kind of build on this aura of like mystery and secrecy that, had surrounded it for years. And it was at this point that a lot of the elaborate initiation rituals were instituted. And also at this time, the number of degrees was kind of incrementally increased throughout the years from the initial 3 to the 33 that we know today. And the formation of the Grand Lodge and like this expansion that followed it, it's kind of widely considered to be the the event that changed Freemasonry from like a simple craftsman guild to like this pseudo religious global power that it is today.
You know what would be really funny is if we're all wrong and it was just a club and that's all it ever was.
Yeah, the joke would really be on us. That we'd have to find somebody else to blame everything on at that point.
It's a whole other organization. Like they purposely set this up just so that like everybody looks over here, but they're actually doing some shit over here. Because that's how most stuff works, is sleight of hand.
You know,
it's the hospitals. They never went away. They won that thing and then they disappeared. So they're the real ones controlling this shit.
Yeah, that's why, like, healthcare and insurance and all that kind of shit's such a shit show. It's those damn hospitalers.
Hey, man, and if you look into the whole thing with
Big Pharma.
Yeah, with the medical symbol, it has the 2 serpents wrapped around it, and
we're going to talk about that next week. The caduceus, yeah.
Yep, and Hermes. It's linked in with Hermes and stuff because it's the Hermetic arts.
Dude, we are going penis deep in Hermes next week. And he's going to like it.
So, I mean, again, there's the whole underworking under that. So maybe they're 2 separate groups and we're all looking at them like they're the same thing.
Maybe so. Hey, we're kind of just joking around and flapping our gums, but we may be onto something.
I feel like that might be something. Like, legit. It might be 2 different organizations, man.
So we're going to close out this part 1. We're going to talk about Freemasonry in America a little bit. And, we could do a whole series just on this. So I'm really, really, really just skimming the surface here. But in 1731, the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania was founded, and this was the first Masonic lodge in America. And Freemasonry really took off in America. It spread quickly, and by the start of the American Revolution, there were over 100 lodges in the American colonies. And these Freemasons, of course, everybody knows this, were very crucial to the revolution and the establishment of the United States. And this is a quote I found, quote, "The new nation was originally conceived as the ideal hieratic political structure postulated by certain Masonic rites." And, this is something that you come across all the time in kind of conspiratorial type circles, is that this was never a Christian nation. It was always a Masonic nation. That was always the intent, and everything else that entails that we're going to get into more of, the sun worship and Hermes and all that kind of stuff. But this whole,
they said religious freedom. I mean, they didn't specify, I guess, right?
And like we said at the top of the show, they said you got to believe in an ultimate power. They don't say what that's got to be. That could be the fucking sun. That could be Hermes. That could be Baphomet. They don't say who it's got to be.
They kind of hide all of this stuff under Christianity to try to mask what they might actually be doing or actually worshiping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, the Freemason Holy Bible, I guarantee you if I actually read through that, there's probably a lot of stuff that's tweaked purposefully.
Yeah, and, it wouldn't take a whole lot of tweaking for a lot of that stuff to have a completely different interpretation.
Dude, I forgot I had this book. I picked it up at some bizarre bookstore one day. It's some kind of Masonic decoding book. So the entire book, it's a black book, and none of the words make sense. It's just random characters scattered throughout the pages and stuff. And I asked New York Patriot at one point, because obviously he used to be part of the OTO, about it, and he basically said that it's like a code book that you're supposed to remember all these rituals and everything that are in it, but it doesn't actually have the words written. So if it gets into the wrong hands, somebody isn't able to decipher or read it. But essentially you skim the words through certain spots and you're able to read what it says. But I haven't been able to decipher it yet, but I do have one. I found one randomly one day and I was like, this is cool. I'm gonna get this.
No, that's awesome. Several years ago, me and Jenny were at a flea market up here, and they had this book. It was called the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. It was obviously super old. And it was $65, and I wouldn't buy it. And I've kicked myself in the ass every day since then that I didn't just buy this fucking book, because that would have been great to have for this episode. But hey, life's a funny thing. You never know where you're going to end up. So,
hey man, maybe if I gave you this decoder book, maybe you'd actually be able to figure it out one day.
I'd be pretty fucking impressed with myself if I could.
Just for shits and giggles too. I know you can see it, but for the listeners and stuff that might not be able to see it, I'm trying to go to like this is what most of the book looks like.
Yeah, so it just looks like serial killer ciphers, basically.
Yeah, just random scattered letters throughout pages, and that's like the entire book is just that.
So basically, there's some sort of key that you have to unlock everything in there. I would certainly assume,
because the index you have entered apprentice degree, fellow craft degree, master mason degree, and then it says entered apprentice degree, and then it goes into all the fucking crazy word that you don't know what it says.
So okay, let's put a pin in this, because next week we're going to talk about an aspect of Freemasonry I was not familiar with before I started doing the researches. They're called tracing boards. And I think this could have something to do with this. So let me dig into
Dude, if I could finally figure this book out, I'm going to be so happy.
I mean, I don't think we're going to be able to figure it out, but I mean, we're going to talk about keys and ciphers and stuff like that more next week. So we could go on for a while, but let me finish up Freemasonry in America, and then we can shoot the shit a little bit after that if you want to. So at least 19 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were confirmed Masons. And this included George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and John Hancock, amongst many others. In the year 1777, which again seems like a strange year just numerologically, American Freemasonry officially cut ties with British Freemasonry. And at that point, the American Grand Lodge was established. And, kind of just some general things. At least 25 U.S. presidents and vice presidents have been confirmed Freemasons. This includes George Washington, John Adams, Andrew Jackson, FDR, which is an interesting one.
FDR. Sorry, it's just a fun one to say.
Harry Truman, Gerald Ford, and Ronald Reagan. And Truman and Ford were confirmed 33rd degree Freemasons. And I think this is kind of interesting because of the whole Harry Truman, making accords with alien conspiracy theory. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. And again, not getting political, just current events. A lot of people really believe that our probably future president, Donnie T, he's a 33rd degree Freemason. There's a lot of smoke about that.
I mean, he is a businessman. I mean, and the Illuminati cards, man, he's on one of those. So that's just another thing that was guessed. They got Obama right on those. They got the exact guy's face, and it said something along the lines of, no matter where you are, snipers can hit you or something like that. So, I mean...
yeah, we could do a whole episode on that. But anyway, so, great piggyback off of that. This Masonic influence in America, it just extends all across the board. Charles, L'Enfant was the architect who was responsible for designing Washington, D.C. He was a confirmed Mason. And it's been suggested that the street layouts of Washington, D.C. contain, these various Masonic and occult symbols. They say you can draw a lot of like stars and triangles and pentagrams. And there's even supposedly a depiction of the devil. That one's, kind of...
Didn't they kind of breeze over this a little bit in, what's that? Oh, what? National Treasure. Didn't they kind of breeze over the map at some point during those movies?
Probably. It's been so long since I've seen those. Like, I need to go back and watch it just in light of how much of this I've dug into, because that's probably one of those deals where they're fucking telling you shit. You just got to pay attention to.
Dude, Nicolas Cage is the main actor in it. Like, that guy's just off the walls with all of his acting stuff. I mean, like...
And it was a fucking Disney movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, so. Which everybody knows they're links to all this kind of stuff. So...
Exactly. So... But kind of going back to this whole, street layout thing, this is a fun quote I found. Quote, "The intersections of Massachusetts Avenue, Rhode Island Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, Vermont Avenue, and K Street Northwest do indeed form a 5-pointed star or, a pentagram or pentacle, if you will, going back to the whole tarot thing. So furthermore, the Washington Monument, that's fucking straight up Egyptian obelisk. We're going to talk again more about the Egyptian stuff next week. But obelisks are sometimes referred to as the phallus of Baal. Baal, the god, it's his junk, Dude,
and just now that because you brought up the Egyptian stuff, the Lincoln Monument, tell me that doesn't feel very reminiscent of all like the pharaoh sitting in the chairs that they have all over Egypt too. So I mean, just another one that I just popped into my head. But
yeah, like so much of this Freemasonry stuff, what's not rooted in, kind of King Solomon type mythology, it's rooted in Egyptian mythology.
I was going to say even some Greek stuff too, because if you look at like the pillars for the buildings, it's very reminiscent of Greek, which when you get into the Greek stuff, you get into the Roman gods, because essentially that was all hijacked from
all the same thing.
Yeah,
and then
from that, so it's still
like
linked.
The original Hermes, not Hermes Trismegistus, who we're going to talk about a lot next week. But anyway, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So rounding this out, this is just kind of a couple fun facts. Charleston, South Carolina was chosen as the location for the Supreme Council of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. And they chose that city because it is on the 33rd parallel. And, me and Jenny were just in Charleston over the holidays. So I wish I had known this back then. We could have tried to see this thing.
And another thing we could throw in too, I do have another friend, Brad Layzell, who actually was on the confessionals at one point. He specifically dives into the 33rd parallel and all the high strangeness and stuff that happens with that. So if you ever wanted to, we ever want to have him on as a guest too, I'm sure he would be more than happy to go over all the high strangeness that's involved with the 33rd parallel.
Yeah, I mean, this subject just intertwines with so much stuff. And the further you get into it, the more connections you see. Like,
this is why we're doing it on a cryptid show, guys. Like, you just got to get to the end to understand it. As soon as you get 33rd parallel, everybody's like, oh, okay.
Hey, this isn't just a cryptid show. This is about bizarre encounters, and this shit gets pretty bizarre.
I feel like encountering a Freemason, for the most part, is pretty bizarre, especially when they come up and they say, what's that phrase where they test them? They say,
something about like on the level or something like that.
No, it's something like, are you a widow's wife or something like that? Or are you there's some weird saying that I've heard before. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's one of those things that I remember after the show. But yeah, it's just some weird phrasing like that.
If it hits you, we can talk about it next week.
I think it's Are You a Widow's Son? I think that's what it is.
No, I didn't come across that one. But so kind of wrapping this up, membership in American Freemasonry peaked in like the 20s and 30s. It's been in supposedly a steady decline ever since then. And today there are roughly 3 million active Freemasons in the U.S.
That you know of.
3 million.
They just got more secret through time.
Yep. So that's kind of all I've got for part 1. Again, we're going to hit a lot of the symbolism and ritual and the weird stuff and kind of occult symbolism and connections. We're going to hit that hard next week. But do you have any kind of final thoughts on part 1?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, given a good framework of everything. We got into all the weird religious stuff that I like to dive into, as far as like the Solomon's Temple and Freemason history with all that kind of stuff. So considering that you want to condense it down a little bit, I think you did a wonderful job of it, and you covered all the bases and everything that needed to get hit at least.
Well, and I think it's a good thing we decided to split this up, because we're well over an hour now. So
yeah, and you thought it was going to be like 45 minutes, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, you could talk about this for hours and barely scratch the surface, which we are going to talk about it probably for another hour or so.
And when you start talking about it, you start connecting more stuff in your head, and then you're just like, wait a second. Because you'll write the stuff
know
like
what to look for.
Say you wrote the entire script and didn't catch that apple tree thing, and the fact that the apple represents knowledge, so and that's what the Freemasons are trying to keep secret.
And
so
serpents, caduceus, serpent worship, Jupiter. Yeah, we might have to do, honestly, like part 2 will lay out all the symbolism and stuff. We might just need to do like a whole episode of just witty banter, talking, shooting the shit, because like I said, we're going to get into the fun stuff next week.
And then we'll get real conspiratorial, so that's always fun too.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I got.
Speaking of that, at some point, just a future episode idea, we should definitely go through the Illuminati cards from the present up to the point we're at, and do the ones that are supposedly in the future, and try to make some guesses with it. I think that might be a fun episode. I don't think I've ever actually heard anybody do like a full episode on like covering all the Illuminati cards.
Hey, if nothing else, that would be great for bizarre inquiries.
That is very true. Might be a long one though, because I don't remember how many cards are in the deck.
We could split it up. It could be a multi-part series. We're a Marvel Cinematic Universe in this sumbitch.
That's true. Just keep connecting ties and putting plants everywhere, and eventually it'll all come together.
Or not.
Or not. I mean,
if you're Marvel,
we'll try to connect them. Marvel, anyway. We try a little bit harder than Marvel.
Anywho, if you guys want to be a guest on the show or have us as a guest on your show or collaborate or contribute to the show in any way, just get up with us somehow. We're easy to find. Just, hit us up. We'll talk about Freemasons, cryptids, whatever you guys want to talk about. Just get up with us.
And I don't know if we've ever actually dropped our email on here. So bizarreencounters@outlook.com if anybody wants to email us directly. That is also available in the link tree, which includes all of the stuff we talked about today. And if anybody is interested in podcast or audiobook production services, you guys can shoot me a message through Open Minds Media, which is also available on that link tree. And just like we always tend to do, we get unhinged, we have a lot of fun, we don't care what people think about us, we stay bizarre, man. So just like us, all of you guys out there should always, always stay bizarre. Bizarre.
Obelisks are balls penis?